Aaron Rodgers, he's back with the Packers, of course, that's not new, but he has lost his favorite and most reliable target, Davante Adams, reuniting with his college QB, Derek Carr, in Las Vegas. And the Raiders, they've also added Chandler Jones from the Cardinals on the defensive side. So Las Vegas' odds to win the AFC West, they've jumped from plus 1,000 to plus 700. Pierce, we start with you. Would you be surprised if the Raiders actually supplanted the Chiefs in the West?
Yeah, I would be. I mean, sure, they added a couple players. That's great. That's nice. But the last time when these teams faced off last season, the difference was pretty wide. The Chiefs destroyed the Raiders. And yeah, Adams is a great receiver, but that gap between these two teams is pretty significant. And look, the Chiefs have been on top for quite a while. They're going to remain on top. We tried to say that they were done last season, and that didn't really pan out. The Chiefs just win. They're going to keep winning. The Raiders are fine. They're better, but they're not nearly close to the Chiefs yet.
So apparently, Geoff, not a team does a couple players make, basically?
I mean, I'll take a little bit more of an optimistic look at it than Pearce. I mean, look, it is the NFL, right? I mean, anything can happen. And when you put an elite, I mean, people calling Derek Carr elite, they're probably going to laugh at me, but it's a pretty solid combo with Davante Adams and Derek Carr, right? We saw what Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford did last season. I mean, they essentially carried their team to a Super Bowl. Now, the problem with the Raiders is that it's not just the Chiefs that they have to worry about. Like, if you're betting on the Raiders to win the division, I mean, now you have to go through Russell Wilson and this stacked Chargers team. So could the Raiders do it? I mean, I take the optimistic look at, yeah, I definitely think that they're at least live. Like, I think adding Chandler Jones adds a factor in their pass rush that was something they really needed to address. So that's positive. And I just think that Derek Carr is a little bit better quarterback than people realize. And maybe he's not quite at the level of Matthew Stafford, but I don't think he's necessarily that far behind either. So I think this Raiders offense could surprise a lot of people. And I think they will be able to keep up in games with the Chiefs. But they're going to need not only Chiefs regression, they're going to need like the Broncos to start slow or just have troubles. And they're going to need the Chargers maybe to go through some growing pains. So it's a long road for the Raiders to get to the division title. But I think at the very least, they've put themselves in the discussion for me because I'm very interested to see how this offense is going to run. This offense was a lot more efficient than people realized last season. When you throw a guy like Davante Adams in there, I mean, the arrow is only pointing up for the offensive capabilities of the Raiders right now. So.
Well, look, we don't have time to talk about it right now, but I'm borderline shocked that Green Bay is still sitting third in the DraftKings Sportsbook in terms of Super Bowl favorites at plus 850, losing Davante Adams and not getting anything back, and Aaron Rodgers with no one reliable to throw to. But, you know, we'll get there another point, obviously. Deshaun Watson, more QB news. We know he's not going back to Houston. The expectation, he will land in either New Orleans or Atlanta. Both those teams plus 2,500 on the DK Sportsbook right now if you wanted to, you know, wager a guess basically on where he's going to land. Geoff, can either club with Watson compete with Brady's Buccaneers in that division?
I mean, look, the Saints have absolutely owned the Buccaneers over the last few years. I mean, yeah, the Bucs obviously have gotten the title and they got the division win last year, but it's not for like because they were dominant against the Saints. The Saints defense has been extremely good at shutting down Tom Brady. For the most part, obviously there's that one division loss, but no, I mean, I think I wouldn't be going out to bet either one of these teams with Deshaun Watson, but I do think that both Atlanta and the Saints have a little bit better of a chance, much like the Raiders, than probably people realize. The Falcons went out and added Casey Hayward on defense, you know, really addressing the cornerback position. They still need to get some kind of pass rush inside, but perhaps that can be addressed with the draft. I just think that Deshaun Watson is going to add a factor here on offense that both teams have kind of been sorely lacking over the last couple of years. You have two dome teams, you know, in their heyday. What did they do? They used to put up points. They just used to outscore their opponents. That potentially is going to be back on the table for either one of these teams next season. So, no, I think that this division is actually going to be a little bit more competitive than people realize. Can Tom Brady just come in and pick up right where he left off at the start of last year? You know, the Buccaneers, they've been really good the last 2 years, but, like, you know, they didn't really look too good in going out in the playoffs last year either. I think Deshaun Watson's going to make whichever team he goes to very competitive. I think plus 300 right now is a little bit shorter than I'd like on the DraftKings Sportsbook. I'd much rather, you know, if Deshaun is going to Atlanta, get like a plus 400 number. But it's something to keep an eye on because I think wherever he goes, that team is certainly going to compete next year.
With Geoff's guy Carson Wentz gone, you've got, of course, a Colts team really with kind of no quarterback right now, Pearce. Do you think Indianapolis is rooting for Watson to land in Atlanta so at least Matt Ryan becomes available?
Sure, that's fine. If Watson goes there, then they get Matt Ryan. They pick because Ryan will get cut, so you can sign him. But look, let's say he doesn't go there. Let's say he goes to Tampa, or goes to New Orleans. Well, then Jameis Winston becomes available. I'd much rather have Jameis Winston than Matt Ryan. And then going to the first question, I don't think Watson helps either one of these teams. I think it's going to be marginal. Maybe they go to a 500 team. Why would you do this? They're not going to compete. And I hate to be the pessimistic person here, but let's just be real. Neither of these teams are going to beat the Buccaneers this season. So why mortgage your future to get Watson to get to maybe 500 and take all the baggage that comes along with him? Why not just take your sub 500 a year and build for the future? You're not beating Tampa this season.
Pearce. He's 26. They're obviously looking ahead. I think they realize they can't compete with the Bucs next year, but they're saying 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when Tom Brady finally retires, potentially, we'll be the kings of the division. So Pearce probably right. It's probably the Bucs division next year, but
it is.
Geoff, do you believe that Pearce actually hates, whatever, being the negative guy, however he phrased it?
No, he definitely doesn't hate it. He loves it. He gets up and he says, who can I put down today and put
wakes
my
up
foot on
and chooses chaos. It's the kind of guy Dietrich is. All right, to me, a big story we haven't spent nearly enough time on, not just on this show, but in life, on Twitter. Allen Robinson, from the Bears to the defending champion Rams. I recognize Robinson was not all that great last year, and obviously was banged up, but he wasn't the guy he was the 2 previous seasons when he's out there leading the NFL in targets. But the Rams, they've already got Cooper Kupp, in theory Robert Woods, Van Jefferson. They could have Odell Beckham Jr. back eventually after his injury. He's indicated, at least prior to this, that he wanted to re-sign there. Could this, Geoff, be an all-time offense?
I mean, let's just add on to that. The division next year, I don't think it's going to be nearly as good as this division has been in past years. Seattle is just going to be, I think, a dumpster fire, and I don't really think Arizona is going to be any good. So I think the Rams just have the potential to maybe even beat up on a couple division opponents next year. Yeah, this offense is going to be good. It's time we got to give, McVay and Stafford and Cooper Kupp a little bit more credit here. I mean, they did it last year, despite, Pearce and I calling for them to eventually get beat. But I think they're going to put up numbers at the very least. Bringing Allen Robinson in is smart. And now, look, Robert Woods is still there too. I mean, that's the thing he's just like the forgotten dude. Robert Woods was a very productive receiver a few years ago. I think there's a good chance they move on from Robert Woods and he doesn't start the season there, but you've still got Robinson with Van Jefferson. This offense is going to be just as dynamic as it was last year, and they still don't really have like a superior runner of the ball either. So you're going to see Robinson get a lot of targets. So I think that for fantasy purposes, Cooper Kupp's probably not going to have the greatest season on earth like he did last year, but he's going to be very solid. Matthew Stafford, I think, is going to be a very solid fantasy play. And yeah, Allen Robinson coming in, playing that Odell Beckham role. He's kind of a better possession receiver than Odell Beckham anyways, and he's probably going to get a few more targets. So I think this is a very good spot for Allen Robinson to land. We'll see what they do end up doing with Woods and Beckham. There's a lot of moving pieces still here, but for right now, the Rams, you can pencil them in for just another solid offensive year for sure.
Go ahead, Pearce. Try and find something negative to say about this offense.
Yeah, I'm trying to be positive, but I can't do it. Yeah, there's a lot of negative things here. You got Andrew Whitworth retiring. The offensive line was shaky at times last season. The run game wasn't very good. And so you could say, well, that means they're going to pass more, but that also means you're going to have more of a less balanced attack, and defenses can key in on pass coverage. So that's going to be a problem. You've got too many mouths to feed from the receiving perspective. And then also, Allen Robinson is probably, when we talk about excuses, I don't know of any receiver we've made more excuses for ever. Oh, well, if he just had a good quarterback. And then we say, oh, well, if he just had it there every single season. How many times, are we going to say that? Are we going to put up with that? I don't know. I think he'll make the team better. I don't think he'll be interesting at all in terms of fantasy. His best days are probably behind him.
The exact same thing he said about Odell Beckham, by the way, who went and scored like a touchdown every game with the Rams. So
look at his numbers. He did hardly anything last season.